Um, I'm Steve McDowell. I'm here with Michael McDowell, some relation. Mike, we're kind of like the Property Brothers, only better looking.
I can go with that.
And so we're just off the road, both of us. You were in Barcelona for Mobile World Congress, and I am just back from San Jose, where I was out at NVIDIA GTC. So a lot of interesting stuff on both sides. I think for this podcast and video, we're going to focus on kind of the connectivity piece, right? Whether that's networking or telco, whatever. Um, but I'm interested to know because you work in IT. You're not an analyst, right? So you're very kind of hands-on with a lot of this stuff. Um, this was your first Mobile World Congress?
It's my first Mobile World Barcelona conference, right?
Yeah.
So I did attend MWC in Vegas last year.
Mhm.
It was last fall sometime. So I have to tell you, it's night and day. It's the same organization, right? The same type of vendors, same technologies on display. But just in terms of overall attendance,
Yeah.
in both attendees and the uh, um, the companies with the displays, right? The presenters, huge difference. And I was caught. I have to be honest, I was caught a bit off
Huge
guard.
difference in what? Huge difference in the size of the crowd and the breadth of the technologies,
Just sheer numbers,
sheer
right?
numbers. Because Mobile World Congress Barcelona gets close to 100,000 people.
Yeah, they were expecting around 85,000, and they
Okay.
exceeded 100K.
Wow.
So I think
Wow.
more people showed up than they expected.
And the Vegas show was half that, a third that.
Oh yeah, probably a third. Yeah,
Okay.
probably a third. It was much smaller. So it was interesting, right? So I was caught off guard. And I wasn't quite sure what's happening here. I know Barcelona is like the mothership when it comes to all things connectivity, right, or mobile. So I expected bigger crowds. I knew that, but I wasn't quite sure why there were so many more vendors and presence there, right? So as I asked around and talked to these folks, I asked them why they weren't in Vegas, and come to find out, a lot of these vendors are not allowed to sell their technologies in the United States. So
Hmm.
why bother coming, right? And then others, just don't, for various reasons, just don't sell their technologies there. Mostly Chinese companies, right? So I think that really hurts the show in Vegas.
Yeah.
And they have a nice platform in Barcelona to present to global attendance, right? Folks from all over the world there. So, but
So I'm
yeah,
curious.
getting back to the sheer numbers of
Yeah.
attendees, I think it says a lot about the industry and the interest, right, in mobile connectivity. I think there's definitely a use case problem out there, right? Everyone's looking for that use case, that killer app, if you will.
Yeah.
But tons of interest in the technology, right? And being in understanding what offerings are there, what's coming, right, and how folks can participate in the industry.
Well, I want to drill down just one level. So, Mobile World Congress, you said mobile twice. Um, and one of the things I picked up at GTC was, when we say mobile, we don't mean phones anymore, right? I
Right.
mean, there was a time when, like, I went to the last MWC I went to was in 2011, maybe 2012, and it was all about phones, right? It was
Mhm.
the dawn of the smartphone. Now we're
Right.
kind of in the AI age. I know that in your day job, you're rolling out 5G across your enterprise. Um, how much of the show is about kind of edge and uh, maybe not mobile, but outside the data center connectivity versus kind of mainstream, well, versus mobile phones, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Well, the mobile device manufacturers don't want to be left out of the AI craze,
yeah,
right? So there's a huge push by those folks to focus on the device end, right? There's so much more going on that enables that, from the telco piece up to the cloud piece, right? But devices certainly play a role. Um,
okay.
so, some companies are wanting to shift, some of the AI functions to the devices themselves. So there's quite a bit of a talk around that type of technology.
Yeah, I'm just wrapping up a paper now, or an article on something that Sony is doing, right? I mean, we talk about AI, and all the sexy AI right now is all around generative AI. It's around large language models, big giant infrastructure. But man, there's a lot of AI being deployed, right? You got kind of human detection right in your Ring camera on your porch. Uh,
Hmm.
what Sony's doing is they're shrinking the inference bit for kind of image processing, which is probably the bulk of AI that's deployed today, and putting it directly into a camera, right? And they have this thing called Atrios, where they're putting these image models in these cameras for kind of like retail manufacturing environments. So for retail, they envision, I have these all up and down my aisles, and they tell me when I need to put more Kellogg's cereal on the shelf, right? Because there's a
Right.
gap. So a lot of AI happening at the edge, right? And those are going to be connected via 5G or however. Um, but so you went to MWC. It's a big investment, a big trip. What were you hoping to gain, and did it meet your expectations?
Yeah. What was I hoping to gain? Well, for one, I was just interested at a high level in the experience of it
You
all,
just
right?
wanted to go to Barcelona.
Yeah. Yeah. You mean besides the wine and the tacos?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Um, yeah, definitely met the expectation there. Uh, but yeah, I wanted to see where the industry was moving, right? We're talking about how it used to be really a device show, and I know it's not that anymore. But what is it, right? That's what I wanted to see. What, where mobile or players in the mobile arena focusing their efforts, their attention? Where's the new technology going to come from? Now, to your point, devices have kind of maxed out at this point in terms of capabilities. I'm sure there's some really cool things to come, but nothing. You don't go expecting something exciting. So it's like, okay, what is drawing 100,000 people to this place, right? So, you know, I didn't find the show any different from some of the other tech shows out there. There's a huge focus on AI, sustainability, and then there's some industry specific stuff like Open RAN, right? There was a lot of talk around that as well. Um, yeah, just circling back to your other question. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely AI is in mobile is definitely beyond, or because of AI, the mobile is definitely beyond just the device. You talked about a couple of use cases, and then because automotive is a huge one as well, right? Drone surveillance, things
Oh,
like
sure.
that are happening there. And I saw some yeah, one, I did see a really cool demo of some drone technology that these folks have created a drone that can stay up for days, right? And provide 5G cell coverage to I don't know, it's like over 100 square miles from one drone, right? It's amazing technology. So you can put them like in disaster areas or parts of Africa where they don't have 5G coverage, and it can communicate to a downlink, right? So I think that 5G technology and mobile device technology is kind of shifting from that device to some of these other use cases, right? And really, it's about providing like a 5G backhaul, if you will, right, to a ground station.
Now that's a cool use of drone technology. So here's where I struggle, right? So I have a DJI drone and I can maybe keep it up for 20 minutes. How are these guys staying up for a day? Is
Oh,
it
it's solar.
it's solar?
It's solar.
Wow. Okay. So it's like a hovering platform, like portable base station.
Yeah, it looks like a giant glider. It's typical airplane, right? Structure with a propeller. Yep. And then it has they're actually using K-band, satellite technology for the downlink to a
Okay.
base station that's fiber connected right to the backhaul. And then the drone itself is providing 5G coverage to devices on the ground. So you could use it like they were using it for public network, right? But there's use cases like say in a forest fire, wildfire area, where you have a private 5G network between the guys on the ground. Guy has a backpack on this 5G base station, and they're all using that to communicate with one another. Right. So this technology kind of replaces the guy with the backpacks. Now everyone has devices, connects to the drone, and it backhauls down. And you
And
can also not just for communication, right? There's all sorts of telemetry data, where the fire is moving, depending, I don't know what all apps they're using out in the field, but things like it opens up the possibility for a lot of apps to be brought into some dangerous situations like that, right?
and using the K band for the downlink. So as long as I have line of sight, I don't have to have, I don't have to have my bridge to the outside world directly underneath this thing like I would with one of
Right.
the pop-up trailer kind of ones, right?
Exactly.
Um,
Sure.
so you got a little more distance. That's very cool. So you talked about some of the big themes. So a lot of AI. A lot of 5G. Uh, are people talking
Yeah,
about? I've been seeing a lot of things in the press recently about like 5.5G on our way to 6G or next gen G. They starting to talk about that?
Steve. I mean, the 5G 6G question is a big one right now. I think it's one that's starting to pick up the conversation starting to pick up momentum, right? Because 5G is not really taking off the way people expected. Like, I mean, the spend on that is, not meeting expectations. And I think that's the root of some of the layoffs you've seen out in the industry, right? With some of these 5G manufacturers. The spend's just not there. And the reason being is because the use cases aren't fully defined, right? I think enterprises are still trying to figure it out. And I think telcos are still trying to figure it out too. I think they all recognize there's opportunity to monetize 5G, right? They just haven't quite figured it out yet. And one thing that's interesting was, I had conversations with some of the telco guys and some of their suppliers around telcos' challenge with monetizing the data that they're already collecting, right? Everything's passing through these guys, through the central office, right? They have
Yeah.
access to it all. And the number one piece of feedback I got was that telcos don't have the capacity to do anything with the data. They are staffed and geared towards support, right? It's their job is to keep this base commodity type infrastructure up and running 100% of the time, right? So they're hyper focused on that. So they know that, they recognize that. So what their play is to bring AI into the picture, right? To take some of that support load off, free up resources that can focus on this new business model, monetizing the mobile data, if you will, right? And
I
I think,
yeah.
yeah, and there's talk around how, we have to move. There's going to be AI component pushed to the edge, right? Some of it's going to be on the devices. Some might be a little bit heavier lift, but still needs. You don't want it in the cloud. So maybe what telco is thinking is, hey, we have these central offices. Potential's there to create these mini data centers, right, closer to the edge. So I think they have an idea of how to monetize it, what their play might be, but they're struggling to shift their resources and bring the skills in while maintaining, without a huge investment.
Well,
In,
and I think one of the ways they're addressing that, it's like I'm seeing a lot of the same things you're seeing, and I have
Mhm.
kind of my own theories. But yeah, there was a period where you couldn't escape the word 5G, kind of like AI today, right? It's going to
Yeah,
change the world. Everything's got 5G, but all it really is a big fat pipe, right? And it still needs a use case. Um, and I think AI is providing that. Um, but when so 2 points, right? I think one is, to your point that the telcos are really good about operationalizing kind of connectivity, but not so good at the other stuff. That's where we're seeing the cloud providers step in. And I think, AWS, Amazon AWS in particular, has strategic relationships with all the top telcos in the US, where they're saying we can extend our cloud presence you know,
mhm,
to whatever facility you can give me out on the edge, right? And they have a whole set of offerings around that to make it easy for like a systems integrator to come in and say, I can use Verizon's 5G with Amazon's, I forget what they call it, with Amazon's, um, what do they call it? Anyway, I could use Verizon's 5G with Amazon's kind of edge cloud compute, right, and solve these problems.
yeah.
And
Well, yeah. I mean, the question is like, where do telcos want to play, right? Do they just want to be a landlord for Amazon, cloud
I think
infrastructure?
Amazon would like that.
Yeah, I'm sure they would. It'd be great.
I don't know. I don't know that culturally the telcos are set up to do that. Um,
You're right.
you know,
I, I think that's part of the challenge, right?
none of them are really delivering full stack today. And you look through these presentations, and they're all we can enable it, right? And an important thing to think about too, when I'm thinking about enterprise in particular, edge is not just about cars and mobile devices. Edge can be big, right? It could be a railroad that's got a big HCI cluster that's doing train car inspection, where I need a lot of compute.
Mhm.
You see those kind of things. So it's really, I look at edge and things talked about at Mobile World Congress a little bit differently, which is as an extension of my IT infrastructure. It just means it's outside the data center and not in the cloud, right? And
Right.
how do I reach it and do that reliably? And I think that's the promise of whatever's beyond 5G. Uh,
Well, yeah, 5G's here. It's been here for a while. Use cases are still being developed.
mhm.
Meanwhile, technology marches on, right? Six folks are talking about 6G. So the question is like, will use cases develop? I mean, for 5G be applicable under a 6G world, right? Vice versa. Should we be looking at future technologies and just kind of move past 5G at this point?
Yeah,
Uh,
but does the working IT guy care about 6G at this point, right? We're still trying to get our hands around 5G.
yeah, exactly.
It's like, so switch gears a little bit. So I was at NVIDIA's GTC conference. It's the year of AI. This was a huge event. Jensen's keynote, he sold out standing room only at SAP Center, like 17,000 people. Um, it's funny, the last in-person GTC I went to was maybe 30% games, a little bit of robotics, a lot of automotive because, in 2020 we thought that, self-driving cars were just around the
Mm,
corner, and some AI, right? Man, it's now, 98% AI in all its guises. Um, but what stood out to me, kind of one of the big themes was, rolling AI out, whether it's kind of training or using it in inference, uh, we have to change our infrastructure. And I'm not sure IT folks are prepared necessarily for the demands of AI, right? It puts different kind of SLAs on your storage, puts different SLAs on your networking.
mhm,
Um, we were talking before we hit record around, maybe we need to use, and I think we're already seeing, like Aruba uh, um, and Juniper and folks like that, beginning to use AI to help dynamically route and manage SLAs across connections. Um, but the infrastructure has to get smarter, right? Are you seeing that? Uh, just,
yeah,
I mean,
I think
the
you're 100.
infrastructure has to get smarter to kind of manage the dynamic demands or the shifting demands, right?
Right, right. Yeah, sure. And yeah, I think it starts at the edge, right? There's a lot of data coming through out there, especially when you look at manufacturing environments with Internet of Things, right? It's generating tremendous amounts of data. And, I mean, I don't even know if we want to talk about zero trust, right? Because that introduces some complexities that only AI can address, in my opinion, right? In terms of monitoring traffic, make sure it's going where it should go, right? Especially when you're interfacing with your production environment where bad things can happen and bad actors get in there, right? So there's definitely an AI component to the security piece. But yeah, just managing the traffic, the sheer volumes of the traffic and the routing as well, right? AI is going to have to play a role. And I think Cisco and HPE slash Aruba recognize that they're making a huge play through acquisitions, right, to bring that AI capacity into their environments. And HPE is offering it as a service, right,
Mhm.
keeping with the trend, with the direction. So I think it's here now. Capabilities are here. Both companies are doing a great job integrating, their acquisitions quickly, right, into their product offerings. But they're moving fast, and that's great. Enterprises are a bit slower, right? Because
Mhm.
we're talking a lot about use cases that don't exist, right? So I think engineers will tell you, in the manufacturing world, they'll tell you they have ideas, right? It's like, okay, there's a process in the corporate environment you got to work through, and it's slow, right? To get the funding and to identify the ROI around it, right? It takes time. So I think the industry is ahead of the use case, which is good, right? So when enterprises are ready to move, they'll have something maybe they've already deployed, right? Because a lot of this technology can be deployed to existing environments, into existing as a service models that are out there. So I think the industry is well positioned, right, for these use cases. But it's really going to come down to like how long can they hang on without that spend coming their way, right?
Yeah,
Will the
yeah.
innovation continue over the next 24 months if enterprises aren't like engaging quickly to get them that payback for that investment? So it's gonna be interesting to watch.
You talk about moving ahead of needs. So one of the things, um, you know, so NVIDIA announced their new DGX supercomputer, right? So I mean, this is high end. big, hundreds of thousands of dollars cluster for AI training. But the interconnect they're using, and this grew out of some technology they acquired with Mellanox, right? Uh, Kind of the in cluster traffic, and I think NVIDIA wants to bring this as kind of east west traffic across your data center. Man, they rolled out a solution that's 800 gigabits, right, over Ethernet or InfiniBand, right? You get a little more predictive performance out of InfiniBand. So I think they're pushing out a little bit for the AI kind of GPU to GPU.
Right.
Man, they announced, some variations on their Bluefield smart NICs. They rolled out a set of updates to their Spectrum switches, which were Mellanox products. Man, I can put 800 gigabit in my data center today, right? Do I need that much speed? If I'm not doing AI, probably not. I mean, I think the state of the art right now is kind of like, you know, most data centers are playing with 10 gig, maybe 25 gig, and then maybe 100 gig for, you know, higher end data or, higher performance, but 800 gigabit, man.
Yeah. Well, the good news is, of course, you don't need it yet, right? So, which is great for corporate guys. Like we're doing okay,
Uh-huh.
right? With that with the legacy performance, right? Where we are. Um, but yeah, I think like us saying, the industry's just getting ahead of the use case a bit, which is great. I mean, AI is coming. There's no question about that, right? I think there is some question about where the data will reside. Where do you really need that performance, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, Chat GPT is a perfect example where it's all in the cloud, right? It's like, okay, maybe we move some of that to that telco central office we were talking about, right? And some's moving down to the device itself, right? Which solves some sustainability problems, energy use problems. Like there's some optimization there. I think that's going to happen over the next 12 to 24 months, right, on where that compute really is. And but that'll have a direct impact on those speed requirements that we're talking about,
Well,
right? Like
and there's not going to be
if
one
your question is, do you need that much speed? I
Yeah.
think it depends, right? But it's like, do you need that big of a disk drive? Of course not, but you're going to fill that thing up, right? As soon as you get it. So you'll probably consume that bandwidth pretty quickly too, with who knows what going forward. But I think AI is going to be a huge part of that for sure.
Well, and don't assume that all your chat GPTs in the cloud, because what we're seeing enterprises doing, right? Chat GPT and just kind of shorthand for all the large language models, because there's a half a dozen of them, um, provide base models, right? But then for enterprises to really use them, they do some level of kind of fine tuning, we'll call it, right? Which
Hmm.
is I'm supplementing Chat GPT with data that I have in my databases. And
Right.
I follow the database guys pretty closely, and you know, we use the word fine tuning, but there's like RAG and different approaches where, you know, I'm vectorizing all of my enterprise data and then using that with ChatGPT to kind of answer very company specific or industry specific questions. So that data is going to be everywhere. And that's
It
the
will be
problem, right?
everywhere. Well,
Uh,
that's kind of my point. It won't
yeah.
necessarily be in the cloud, right?
Oh, for
Where
sure.
where you're going to see that technology deployed first. So,
So,
I guess the point is it takes a bit of the demand
mhm.
off those cloud data centers. So,
So something came up. So you mentioned you said the RAN word when you talk about MWC. There were several tracks at GTC around Open RAN and vRAN, and RAN is just kind of the software infrastructure for deploying 5G. Am I saying this right?
and hardware.
And hardware, right? Um, but I follow the processor guys, right? Intel and AMD both have variants for RAN because there's some compression or whatever they're doing. Uh, is that a telco only topic, or do IT guys need to care about RAN at all,
Mm.
except as this is how we're doing it?
Oh, okay, yeah. Who cares? Open RAN is
Oh,
the
any
question, not
RAN,
just it.
right? Do I if you're a connectivity guy, how much do you think about RAN on a day-to-day basis, except knowing that it's behind whatever you might be deploying?
Yeah, it's hugely important to everyone involved in the technology, right? From enterprises to carriers to hardware manufacturers, right? So your traditional um, enterprise guys like HPE and Lenovo, right? In the Open RAN environment, they have a play now, right? They can sell hardware for that. So that's a new business for them, so to speak, right? So it's important to them, right, to their business, right? It's important to telcos because now they have leverage with their hardware manufacturer, right? If you know, before it's a closed RAN system, it's 100% one hardware provider, right? You negotiate with one player, right? So now with the open RAN environment, now you can bring in other components and optimize your pricing.
Right, right.
Purchasing guys love that kind of thing, right? Technology guys, maybe not so much because now they have multiple things to support, right? So that's the trick. That's where some of these um, integrators come in and service providers. But as a corporate IT guy, it's an interesting question. In fact, I had a conversation with a colleague at another company who's looking to deploy a private 5G system in their environment, right?
Mhm.
And he asked me the same question: should we care, Mike, if we buy an open RAN or a closed system? So, I told him, and I may or may not be right on this, just an opinion. As a company just entering into the private 5G world with zero experience, maybe a closed system's not such a bad thing, right? You're buying a solution in a box, if you will, 100% supported by one vendor, right? Who designed the thing, the whole stack to work together.
Yeah.
You know what you're getting. You have one source of support. It's a proven technology, proven relationships between all the components. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And the cost optimization you get by bringing it, kind of piecing it together in the open RAN world just might not be there. The value might not be there when you consider the support side of things, right?
But it sounds like it might be good for the system integrators and kind of the channel, right? Because it gives them a lot of flexibility. So they can go find whatever their kind of best ran software solution is
Right.
and then pit, Lenovo and Supermicro against each other for what the servers might be. And then they're still buying the radios from whomever, right? But
Right. Sure, sure. Yeah. I mean, there's only a few players there, right? On that 5G specific technology.
that's an area, and I don't understand this technology, so I'm not going to go deep on it. But that's an area where at least NVIDIA believes, is a great use case for AI. It's in there making decisions like you talked about, but I don't understand them well enough to even go there, so I
Yeah.
won't.
Well,
Um, Last
yeah,
thing,
I would say, like the the telco the telco environment is going to be different than your private 5G environment, right? There's
mhm,
definitely different dynamics at play there that will drive the answer to the question whether or not you want open or not. I think telco is a no-brainer for them just because of the sheer volume of hardware these guys are buying,
mhm.
right? They need to do something to optimize their price. So,
Hey, so I want to switch gears completely. You wrote about something on LinkedIn last week, and it just so happens to directly align with something I'm writing about next week. I'm waiting for an interview to close, um, which is we'll use Palo Alto Networks as a jumping off point, but I don't want to talk about them specifically necessarily. But
mhm,
Palo Alto, if you follow cybersecurity and network security, right, is making a big strategy shift. Right, they're going from kind of point products to this platform play, and they're saying that IT guys want a consolidated set of functionality from one vendor, kind of like you were just talking about with RAN.
mhm,
Um, we don't just see Palo Alto doing that, right? I look across the cybersecurity industry, we're seeing a lot more kind of consolidation of features. Seeing that in observability, Splunk, Cisco's buying Splunk so they can integrate security and observability and kind of, you know,
right,
observability is kind of my source of truth for my infrastructure. Layering on top of that cybersecurity and AI and all this other stuff is powerful. you know, as an industry watcher, we're like, well, verticalization doesn't always work. You got people can excel at each. But as an IT guy, you had an interesting perspective, which is what you see this as good.
oh, yeah, I think it's a good play for sure. I think it's a healthy trend in the industry, put it that way.
Mhm,
So there's definitely a trend in corporate IT, in large organizations, large enterprises, um, to consume security as a service. Right, we're seeing it in the networking world. We see it with HB GreenLake on the data center side of things. Right, that's a really aggressive, healthy trend that's there for them, right? So what you're seeing as a result is like a shift in strategy on the staffing side of things in corporate IT, right? So on this, once you consume servers as a service or data center as a service, your group shrinks, right? Networking, you have fewer and fewer network engineers, right? Security, the same thing, right? There's some economies there and some efficiencies that enterprises just love and want to go after, right? So how to do that, well, in the networking world, it's easy. Most enterprises have the same technology, right? They went in with Cisco 20 years ago and they've been running it ever since. They don't have a mixed environment typically. Maybe through some integrate or some acquisitions they did, but most companies quickly get the old stuff out and put the new stuff in, right? So it's pretty easy. But as you alluded to earlier, in the security world, but enterprises have gone to like a best of breed approach, right? So multiple vendors, right? And some of these components are monitoring the same thing just in different areas. So to respond to a single event might take a huge amount of personnel resources to respond to, right? Because everything's alerting, and there's no real way to see if it's all related to one event or not. So
Right.
people chasing these alerts like crazy, right? So if you can consolidate on a single vendor or at least a single platform, right, then you eliminate a lot of that, right? And it allows AI to come in as a play too, right? Because it knows the environment, it knows what to expect, right? And how these components work together. So
Here's
there's some new technologies, some new efficiencies that can come into play.
here's where I
Now,
worry
the
about that
trick,
approach. Oh, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
well, I was going to say the trick is how do you get enterprises to adapt to the model, right? And that's one of the things I wrote about in the LinkedIn article. It's like a lot of this technology has varying expiration dates, if you will, on the life cycle. So, for a company to come in and want to sell this whole system as a platform, right? It might not align with the company's financial strategies. Like they might have a year left on this other device, right? Or they might have 6 months on this one. So how do you address that? And I think that's where Palo Alto came in, with their play of like giving it to you for free, basically, if you commit long term to their services.